I am Elizabeth Benny, and I'm a professor of political science and campus director of the American Democracy Project here at Indiana University South Bend. The American Democracy is a civic education and engagement project, and we seek to equip students with the skills and the knowledge and the dispositions or attitudes required to become lifelong engaged citizens. One of our big priorities is connecting the campus with the community through hosting events that bring the community on campus or that bring our students out to serve in the larger community. And we do welcome your ideas for future events as well as partnerships. We do co-sponsor events with organizations as long as they are nonpartisan and do not endorse candidates or work to elect or defeat specific candidates. And so if you have events and are looking for a partner or a place to hold them and they have to do with civic education or engagement, we would look forward to hearing from you. I want to welcome you here to this session on contacting elected officials influencing the decision makers. I want to welcome any new participants. We're glad that you're here. And welcome back those who have already participated in our previous sessions on critical thinking and argumentation, and last week's session on critical news consumption. I want to remind you all to please complete your surveys. That is how we are keeping track of you. It also lets us know who you are, how you found out about us, and get you on our email list so that we can send you information about future events. Also, we have 4 events left in the series, including this evening. And so if you are interested in the Civic Leadership Academy certificate, then there is still time to attend all 4 of these remaining sessions in order to earn that certificate. And we will also use your email to find out if you want that certificate electronically, hard copy, or both. Okay. This series is one that we are doing with a community partner, which is the St. Joseph County Public Library. Our first 2 events were hosted there, and these last 4 events will be hosted here in the Education and Arts Building. So this will be our permanent location now for the remaining events. And as many of you know, we developed this series based on some requests that we received from community members, requests for information about how they could become more effective political actors and agents of change in their communities. And so this week's topic is really important of how we can effectively contact our elected officials. And from a general or sort of theoretical standpoint, we know that our republic is designed as a representative democracy, but your elected officials can't represent you, or they can't represent us if they don't hear from us, know where we stand on the issues, what our priorities are, etc. More specifically, if you identify a problem and your neighbors agree that it's a problem, what can you do about it if really the answer is a policy solution? And that's why we wanted to bring together people who have worked at the local level, whether that's the municipal, city level, or the county level, as well as at the state and national levels, because depending on the issue or the problem you identify, the decision maker may be at one of these levels represented on the panel here today. And so today you have an opportunity to get advice from the pros, or at least the people who have worked with constituents to answer their questions and get policies passed or changed. And so they're going to share with us their tips about how to be most effective. And so this will be a Q&A format, and they will share their advice with us. So in terms of speakers at the table here, we have Ryan Spalding, who is District Director and General Counsel for Congresswoman Jackie Walorski, who of course represents Indiana's 2nd Congressional District and was elected in 2012. Ryan has actually been working for Congress since 2013, so since the beginning. And I see him a lot if the congresswoman comes to politically speaking or something, you seem to always be with her. So he is very familiar with our district and will talk to us from that level of national policy making. Up next, we have Nancy Dembowski, and Nancy is not currently a politician. She is a retired politician, but she brings an interesting perspective because she served on the Stark County Council from 1984 to 1991, then as Knox mayor from 91 to 2002, in the Indiana State Senate from 2002 to 2004, and then in the Indiana House from 2007 to 2013. So lots of different offices, and one of the things that I hope she'll talk to us a little bit about is whether or not you need to use a different approach if you are approaching somebody in the State House, for example, versus your local small town mayor. And so she brings a variety of perspectives from those different positions. Up next on the panel is Diana Hess. Diana Hess is a member of the St. Joseph County Council, where she has served since January 2013. Diana also does a lot of neighborhood organizing, so I'm sure she'll bring that perspective as well. Next to her is Karen White, who is serving on the South Bend Common Council. She has served on the council since 2000, and before that was a member of the South Bend Community School Corporation School Board. And then finally, we have Gavin Furlick, who is also a member of the South Bend Common Council, elected in 2011 and re-elected in 2015, so now serving his second term. All right. The first thing that you have to figure out, of course, if you have a problem or an issue, is who to contact. And one of the things that you can do is go to indianavoters.com and click on a little button that will say, who are my elected officials? And then that will, you can enter your address and it will show you national, state, local. If you're in a city, it will have a municipal tab. If not, it will just have the township and even school board level. And then you can find who these people are. Another thing I've placed on the table is the Citizens Guide to Representative Government from the League of Women Voters of the South Bend area. If you're in St. Joe County, it's nice to have the little hard copy. So you can find contact for Jackie Walorski, for Diana Hess, for Karen White, for Gavin Furlick, all in here. You can find out when the public meetings are for each of your levels, whether it's when your school board meetings are, your county council meetings, your city council meetings, and they have this online, but it's nice if you host any kind of forums or debates. You can also see when everybody's up for election next. And so that's what I use actually to plan candidate debates and forums. So that's a nice little guide. There are some copies on the table as you leave. But beyond finding out who your elected officials are, I wanted to ask the panel, more specifically, how can somebody figure out who to contact? If they want to know, who's the decision maker here? How can they find that out? Gavin?
So when you say who's the decision maker here?
So let's say they have a problem in their community, their interest, they think that their local park is dangerous, they think that there's a pothole that needs to be filled in their street is too dark and it needs some light. How do they go about trying to talk to policymakers to figure out who could help me?
Sure. First thing to do is contact your local representatives, whether that be your 3 at-large council persons or your 1 at-large, your district representative. A lot of times contacting the department directly, and this is just from a municipal perspective, they receive a lot of inquiries. They're exceptionally busy, and your representative can serve as a conduit and help you to communicate potentially more effectively if you're not getting a response from the department. Obviously, we'd love for everyone to get a quick response from the department, but if for some reason it's not the response you're looking for, feel free always to reach out to your elected representatives, and it's their job to be a conduit to those departments.
And Karen, if people just don't know which department would handle the problem? Would they be able to just call you and ask? Is that a good route?
Yes, they can, and I just want to piggyback on what Gavin has stated. A lot of our citizens, especially within the city of South Bend, they are unaware that they really have 4 council members working on their behalf. You have the council member from a particular district in which you live in. If you would like to know that district, you can go on the website and you tap down on your government under Common Council. And so again, as you begin to look at who can speak for you, if you're not aware of which department that you can contact, we have what is called 311, and you can call into that particular venue to try to reach department head. But if you cannot reach a department head, then I would encourage each and every one of you to reach out to your council person and also the 3 at-large as well, because we work very closely together, and we work very closely with administration as well. And so again, you do have individuals that are available, and we give out our telephone numbers. I give out my cell phone number. I have to give out my cell phone number because my mom lives with me, and when individuals call me, she tends to forget. And so I'm out here walking, and they said, Karen, I called you. And I said, I didn't get the message. So again, we have different ways in which we want to make sure that our citizens, that they can reach us.
Now, Diana, sometimes people don't know what a county council does or which policies are at a county level. When in doubt, should they, or which of you, you're all in districts, is their council member, should they just take a pick, call one of you, and you can help out, or what's the best way to try to figure that out?
Well, there's a few different things they can do. There's a generic council email address, or certainly the council office phone number. And our secretary, Jennifer, who happens to be in the audience this evening, does a great job of getting that information out to us. She can do that to all of the council members if it's for everyone, or to determine who might be the best person to solve the problem. Or she can also send it to individual council members if somebody knows who the council member is they want to contact. We also have our information listed on the website. I have my cell phone up there. A lot of us probably do. So we certainly don't hide how to get in touch with us, and we welcome people to do so. And like Gavin said, it does sometimes help if you don't know who you're supposed to contact. We can certainly find out for you and do some intervention for you. And also the website, you can find out who your council person is through the map. You can put in your address, and that'll, our faces will pop up. We need to talk about that picture, but anyway. And you'll find out who your council member is for that district, because again, we all represent specific districts. There are no at-large county council members.
So they can also just contact Jennifer, and Jennifer, you can tell them who's working on that issue, or contact Mark, contact Raphael, contact Diana.
Always.
All right.
She loves helping.
Nancy, what if somebody has a problem that really is a state level problem? What's the best approach that you would recommend in terms of figuring out who can solve that problem?
Obviously, it's a little more difficult than it would be on a city level, although speaking from a city level, I would suggest to you that the mayor of Knox, the door was a little more open than it might be in South Bend, so you could usually just walk in, and I suggest that you mentioned the young lady who's the secretary. They're very well trained. I mean, the very worst thing that can happen is that you get you pick up a wrong phone number. I'm guessing that most people are going to make certain that you get the information that you need. You asked about the state level. Certainly, you know, those are bigger districts, more people involved. But those people are probably trained as well as anybody that I've ever worked with in a means of knowing how to handle specific issues. And there are booklets put out that list all of the state representatives, state senators, and their office phone numbers. I mean, there is a main number that you can call that will direct you, but you can get the office numbers. And each of us have what's called legislative assistant, very, very well trained. I mean, they do it every day, all day long, and really, I don't think you need to ever hesitate calling and asking a question, because that's what they're being paid to do, is to direct you in the right way and to get you an answer for your problem. That's what they're responsible to their representative or senator for.
And Nancy, if somebody is really interested in a particular issue, should they call their state legislator, or should they call the committee chair or the person who's sponsoring the bill that they care about?
Well, I think you start with your state legislator, because that's the person who's representing you. I think you start there. I think you don't stop there. I think that you find out, first of all, you find out the author of the legislation. That's the person who's putting it out there. That's the first person that you might want to contact. Then find out who that committee chair is. But don't forget the people that are on those committees as well, because each of them has a vote. And, you just, if you can give them, actually, I think it's numbers more than anything. I mean, when you're sitting in the state legislature and there's an issue on the floor and you haven't heard a thing from anybody, you're just, I mean, I think you have the attitude that the people who put you there trust you to do what they think you should do. But when you begin to hear from people, then it's a major concern, and you understand that people, this is a little different than, it might interest you to know that probably 96% of the legislation that is in front of the state legislature, it probably passes 100 to nothing or 98 to 1. I mean, little of it is, I shouldn't say little, not as large an amount is controversial. But the controversial ones are the ones that you need to speak out about. Make certain that your representative knows that I care about this. It truly makes a difference. It truly makes a difference.
And people, of course, now can go online and look up a particular topic and see what bills have been sponsored and who the sponsors are. That makes things a bit easier for us as citizens.
Well, I mean, that's where you're going to get the information. I mean, that's the person that sponsored the bill. And then sometimes there are sponsors as well as the author of the bill. And so all of those people need to know your opinion is just as important as anyone else that they represent.
And it sounds like if we call our own representative, maybe they might be able to talk to that chair as well, if a bunch of chair citizens.
Well, I mean, even if you don't, I'm not going to suggest that you're going to get to talk to, because the fact of the matter is that they spend a good deal of time on the floor in session, so they can't always speak to you, but they do. I mean, we walk out and they hand us stacks of messages, and that's what we do, is look at them.
Brian, I saw you nodding when Nancy said, just contact somebody, even if you don't have the right person, people will help you get that information. Diana mentioned that too. And also that even if you don't talk directly to the representative, obviously national districts are huge, that they will get the message of what people are saying.
Absolutely, and one of the unique parts about our office is we're open, we're pretty visible, so you can give us a call, and even if you don't know what level of government or who to go to for your problem, we're happy. We keep updated contact information for everyone. We're happy to help direct you in the right direction. And that's, quite frankly, I would say at least a third of the calls that we get every day is directing constituents to the proper person.
Now, Brian, when somebody calls in to the office, whether DC or local, and they express a concern or complaint or support for a specific piece of legislation, or a request that Representative Walorski sponsor a certain piece of legislation, what happens? How is that call recorded, or how is that letter recorded, and what should we know about, how to really be effective in actually getting that, making sure that our call does come to our representative's attention?
Sure. Regardless of the office that you contacted, and our office isn't unique. Every congressional office, House and Senate, they have a software program, and everybody's tied into that software program. So when you call in, or you send an email, or you even walk in the door, all that gets logged. That's a lot of times why you get asked to sign in, or they ask what your address is. It's so that they can find your record and add the notes or add your correspondence to that. And then once that's in the system, every employee can access that. And so if we, if one of the legislative assistants in DC wants to see how many people called in about an EPA piece of legislation, they can quickly access that information. And then, oftentimes the Congresswoman will ask, what are we hearing a lot about? And we'll provide that in reports, or we can go to our system and pull that out, and anybody, or we can quickly brief her on what we're hearing in the district, and we frequently do that.
So you mentioned she'll know what people called about. Is it also recorded what they said?
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
a lot of times, of course, when we get the surveys, things may be framed in a way, whether the state surveys or the national survey, in the way that representative sees the issue and not give a full range of options. So is it also recorded sort of what they say or what position they take?
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically the person on the phone is kind of transcribing or summarizing what comments that they're hearing. So a lot of times, I like to do it verbatim because I like to give, the representative and the folks in DC, specifically if it's a policy issue, I want them to know exactly what a constituent's saying, because I think that's important. And I generally don't even tone it down for language, because I think that anger in some cases, or that praise, it needs to be understood on the other end to whoever is opening up that message or that correspondence.
Now, and some debate that we sometimes hear is which mode of communication you should use. Is a phone call more effective than an email? Is an email more or less effective than a handwritten letter? So I wonder, for each of you, does it matter to you, or is it more effective to have somebody stop by the office versus writing a letter versus emailing versus calling? And maybe we can just go down the line and give your perspective on that.
Sure. First preference is meeting in person. Next would be by phone, actual conversation. Next would be email. And then, not that I don't read letters, but paper mail would be at the bottom of the list. That's much more difficult to reply to, because it requires me to, not that I don't have an envelope and a stamp, but it takes a little more effort. So.
I would say that all the different means of contact is important, from email, personal letter, stopping by the office, asking for an appointment, and I tend to meet individuals where they're at. They want to meet me in the community. I have no problems doing that. But I think that personal contact is so important, because you have an opportunity to connect with that individual. You have opportunity to listen and to hear their concerns. And likewise, to come to the South Bend Common Council meetings. We meet on the second and the fourth Mondays of each month. We tend to meet with our committee structure that usually starts about 3 o'clock prior to the 7 p.m. meeting. And it's at that time that individuals can come and speak on any issues that will be on the agenda at that time. Then they can come back to the 7 p.m. meeting and still have opportunity to be heard as well. So I would tell anyone, utilize any means of contact that you believe would be important to make sure that your voice is heard, and to ensure that once you share your concerns, that we would get back with you as well. So again, there's just different ways to use them all. The last meeting that we had, which was when? 2 weeks ago?
No, last Monday.
Last Monday, we're there to about 11:45. And we started at about 3. And, but we were dealing with a very tough issue, and that was increasing our water rates. And we've had a number of meetings, and we had to make a decision. All the council members were not on board in terms of, those in favor and those opposed, but we listened, and we had to take action. And the council members did not fall out. We didn't have a difficult time in regards to those who were in favor and those who were opposed. And so again, we have to learn how to listen. We have to ensure that we have the correct information. But what's most importantly, that you, our constituents, that you have many opportunities to connect, to communicate, and to make sure that your voices are heard.
Diana, I wonder if you could talk about which mode of communication is most effective from your standpoint, and also if somebody shows up at all the meetings and then they contact you versus somebody who you've never seen before, does that make a difference?
Okay, well, let's start with the first part. I would say if you want some response quickly, that emailing or phone calling is probably going to get you the fastest response. The postal mail sometimes plays in our boxes. We don't always stop by our council offices. It's not like we're there every day. All of us have day jobs as well. So sometimes that stacks up unless they send it to our home. So again, that's a little more difficult, challenging to respond to. I also will go to meet people where they are, particularly if they're having an issue with their property or neighbors, or there's some reason why it's important to go kind of see the environment where they are. And what was the second part again?
Some people go to meetings because
Oh,
they're really
right.
passionate about an issue, and then they call you with a follow-up.
Yeah,
Is that
and that recently
important,
happened.
or-
Well, that recently happened, actually. We had a controversial issue about Ninja Golf Course out in Granger, which ended up being the same night as two other controversial bills, the responsible bidder ordinance and the human rights ordinance. So we were there a little late that evening, but certainly not as late as some council meetings, but we have been there as long as 1 o'clock in the morning. Settling issues. So, but I think it is important for people to come to council meetings. Very seldom does that really happen. So you walk, some issues we think might be controversial and produce some outpouring of people. We walk out and there's really nobody there. And there's also the right at the county council meetings to speak at privilege of the floor, which means you can address any issue that's important to you that's not on that current agenda that evening. You get 3 minutes to do that. So I think it's a good habit of citizens to be able to do that if something is important to them. I think it helps them become more comfortable with us and for us to get more acquainted. And so I encourage people, if they call about something, to do that, to show up at meetings and to be active in that way. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm getting coaching from Jennifer. She takes care of us. Our public meeting is the second Tuesday of every month, and it starts at 6 o'clock.
That's what it does say here.
Right, and we do have, our structure's a little different. So we have committee meetings that are not as public. The public can come, but they typically don't speak, but that's where a lot of the business gets transacted. And that's on the fourth Tuesday of the month. So we have public hearing on the second Tuesday, and our committee meetings at 5:30 on the fourth Tuesday of the month. And those committee meetings are in the council conference room, and of course the public meetings are in the council chambers, just like the city council, same chambers, fourth floor.
Now, Nancy, it's easy perhaps to drop by the cafe where the mayor of Knox is, a little bit more difficult to meet face-to-face with your state legislator. What do you recommend in terms of the most effective mode to actually get a response?
I personally just believe communication is communication. I think whatever means by which you can do it is important. I sort of enjoyed email when I was in Indianapolis because you could sometimes read your emails while some of the more mundane things were going on the floor. Things that, might not hold your attention all the time. So you could do that. But I would suggest to you, there is one thing that I would suggest you not do. Don't sign a form letter.
Yes.
People give you form letters to say, mail this in. Now, I guess there's one way in which that might be effective. I remember, and I don't remember the issue to be honest with you, but there was one where they were bringing in petitions and form letters, by the box load and piling them in the hallways. Obviously that got people's attention, what is that issue? But take a form letter and put it in your words. Even if you only change some small parts of it, something that shows that you care enough to put something on paper, because I had an issue with form letters. I just thought, how easy is that to sign your name? And so, but any communication is a communication between you and the person who's representing you and is speaking for you while they are in that office. And whatever means you use to communicate to them, they need to know that.
Okay, Brian, advice for the best way to contact a member of Congress or staffers, and also Your opinion on those form letters?
Well, funny, on the form letters, they're treated the same in our office, so whether it's a form letter or a regular letter, we're gonna count that.
Well, that was just a
Yeah.
personal
And I
thing.
understand that completely. I was an intern at the State House, and that was kind of the philosophy of the members I worked for as well. You know, I think that anytime that you can establish a relationship, so that face-to-face is obviously important. And, you know, anytime anybody comes into our office and wants to meet with a congresswoman, if she's not available, I'll take that meeting, and it's something that we're happy to do. Our door's always open. And so I think that that's probably the most preferred method. But, I mean, email, all the other forms of communication work great too. A phone call works great. If you're nervous talking on the phone, leave a message after hours. A lot of people take advantage of that. I would say the one thing I would say in regards to U.S. mail is if you send it to D.C., that gets security screened in another state before it gets brought into D.C. as a result of the anthrax scare and all that stuff. So if you want your letter to get there quickly, I would recommend sending that to the Mishawaka office. But you know, we're set up in such a way that we can handle any type of correspondence sent to our office, and everything's logged.
And don't put anthrax in it.
Yes, absolutely. Words to live by.
Okay, so it goes in the same database, but we'll get there a little quicker, and that's useful to know. Now, what about tone? You know, some people feel like they don't want to be too mousy, they want to be assertive, they want to be passionate and show you how important the issue is. Is there such a thing as being too assertive? You know, does it matter? Is there a certain tone not to take if you want to be taken seriously?
Sure. Yeah, it can be powerful, but always make sure it's respectful. The second that comments become disrespectful, I usually tend to tone the rest of the comments out. So, you know, if it's powerful, that's fine, but make sure it's respectful. And also, to your point of, you know, is it good to see people consistently? If someone shows up consistently to meetings just to complain, and they're never out in the community doing anything positive, it's really difficult. You still listen to them, right? They're still a constituent. You still listen, but it's so much more to see people who are out in the community doing really good things, no matter what they are. And then if those individuals come to a council meeting, express a concern, or you know, express favor for some type of bill, you know, that's taken a little bit better, in my opinion, than someone who just shows up to complain all the time. But first and foremost, a respectful tone is always the best way, I think, to get people's attention.
Okay. I think that, you know, individuals, they're passionate, and they take to heart issues that really impact them on a personal level, those in which they come in contact with. It's always been my policy to be as respectful as possible, to be in a position to listen. We've had some situations in which a citizen may have approached the council and really was not as respectful as that person should have been, but trying to listen, to really try to garner what their concerns are. And we do have two outstanding citizens that tend to come to all of our meetings. And when they do come to the podium, usually it's not on a positive note, but they have every right to do so. And it's our responsibility to listen and to treat them with the level of support and respect, whether I may agree with them or whether I might not agree with them. At one time, we was dealing with, this was when I first was on the council, we were dealing with a rate increase. You know, it's amazing, you know, what situations may bring individuals out. And this person was so passionate, and I was stunned because I was just a new person on the council. She said, please, I'm pleading with you, I'm pleading with you. She got on her knees, and she came up to the podium, and so I was like, wow. And this other council person, he was at a different level. Take her out, take her out, take her out. You know, and I'm trying to say, oh my, this is, what have I gotten myself into, you know? But again, individuals, they tend to respond differently. They're passionate, they have their viewpoints, and our responsibility is trying to navigate all of that to really be able to make a decision that's best for all of our citizens, but also to treat those individuals who may have some difficulties in expressing themselves.
So one point that does raise, if somebody is chronically complaining about every issue, you might not take them quite as seriously as somebody who only comes to you about specific issues.
That's
Is that a
true.
concern? Can you overdo it, Diana?
Well, I would think you could, but I wanted to make a quick note based on Gavin's comments to some neighborhood people I see in the audience, that this is a reminder that your neighborhood associations are very powerful and that working together in the neighborhood association and with other neighborhood associations, if you go to the council, they know, the city council, they know you're out there in the neighborhoods working, trying to make things happen in a positive way, so they're more likely to listen to what you have to say. So that's my little plug for neighborhood associations in the city. But I think respectful is really the key word that everybody, that's one that I had written down, that I think is important. I understand passion. I myself get very angry and irate about different things, but, you know, keep that amongst your friends, you know, and by the time you go and talk to an elected official, I mean, we are human also. Most of us just trying to do a good job. And be as responsive as we can. And for every one person who has one set of beliefs, you're going to have two or three others that have another set of beliefs. So we're hearing from all different sides of these issues. And it's important, if you don't want us to zone out, as Gavin referenced, to keep the tone respectful and also come prepared to have some facts and some really credible evidence to support your case.
Yes, Nancy.
We used to call those people citizens against virtually everything. The cave people, that was what we called them. And that does lose its impact after a while. But I would also suggest to you that know your subject, know what you're talking about. Sometimes you hear rumors, we all hear rumors. Well, we're living in the world of fake news, I guess, but you hear so many things. Make certain that what you hear is accurate. I mean, you can go before a board or a group or a council and you can oppose something that you've heard that one of these ladies was opposed to, and it may not be accurate. Make certain you research everything. Look up all the facts and the information so that when you go before anyone, making an issue and asking them to listen to your side of a story, make absolutely certain that what you're saying is an accurate claim. You don't waste anybody's time that way, and you certainly can make, people will listen to you if you do that. I think, as you said, it is an inherent right in our society for people to be able to tell. I don't think you'd want to be a representative of anything if you couldn't hear from people and know what they wanted you to do in an important issue. Especially when you get to the state level, there are some pretty big issues going on. I mean, we had, buildings full of people demonstrating and those, you can't go through those and not have them make an impact on you. And so we just have to keep in mind that it is everyone's right to do that. And we can gain from it as much as you can. Because I remember a specific issue, and I won't go into a lot of detail, but you get things in front of you sometimes that you think, how could anybody be against this? We had the legislation about car seats for appropriate age, that not just small children were in car seats, but older children. And I thought, what a wonderful thing. How could anybody be opposed to car seats that would save children's lives? And then we started hearing from mothers who didn't have room in their cars for all these cars. There's always a side or an issue that you may not have thought of. So it's your responsibility as citizens to make sure they hear that.
That's great.
Brian, at the national level, of course, there's a lot of lobbying on every side of the issue, a lot of people trying to break through and make their voice heard. What should people keep in mind when they are talking with a staff member or talking with the representative herself?
I think it piggybacks on what everybody else has said here. I mean, if you want to have a productive meeting, you need to be respectful. And I mean, generally, I think everyone in life is more apt to maybe give your perspective consideration if you are respectful rather than hurling insults or being downright rude.
So you can be respectful and yet disagree with a specific policy.
You can be respectful and forceful at the same time.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Now, what about joining with other people and coming in a group? And Nancy, I know, I believe at the end of your term was the whole right to work debate, for example. You had a lot of protesters filling the Capitol. It may or may not make a difference ultimately, but is that particularly powerful versus one person or people individually contacting legislators?
Well, certainly just the total number of people for whom it had an impact, I think, was important. It was a a difficult time, and it was some of it we didn't even spend in Indianapolis. So I just can't impress. I mean, people who are talking about something like an issue like right to work, it's so important to their life. It's so important to what they experience every day. It just impacts on you how the decisions that you're making that affect other people.
Now, what about the most creative or effective contacts you've had? Maybe somebody who brings an issue to you hadn't even really thought about, wasn't on your radar, didn't plan to tackle, but they really stood out to you for some reason because of the approach they took to getting your attention. I wonder if anybody has a story along those lines of something that you'd say, that really made a difference. You want to share?
I just happen to have one. When I first went to Indianapolis in the Senate was a time when Orange County was attempting to get legalized gambling in their county. Small county, no industry there. They were desperate. They needed jobs. I would have guessed that the chances that they would have ever gotten that passed by the General Assembly would have been slim and none. And those people you remember this? Those people came day after, they had a group of people, I think they may have changed from day to day. They had groups of people who came day after day after day, and they left oranges and orange candy and anything orange. Seriously, it was on your desk every single morning. They were in the hallways. They were handing out. That must have gone on for months. It took a long, long time. And today Orange County has a casino.
Okay.
I've just never, ever forgotten it. It was just so impressive. And they were so dedicated, and they weren't going to give up. So respectful but dedicated, I guess, would be a good way to say.
Mine
was
is much
before
more
your
boring.
time, maybe?
I never
Was it?
received any candy.
You heard about it.
I didn't think that'd be effective, but no, I'd say for almost any piece of major legislation that I've helped sponsor or co-sponsor has been the result of individual meetings. So this a lot of times comes from people I've never met before, but they reach out and then they follow through. You'd be surprised at the number of people who send you an email, say, I'd love to talk to you about this, and I say, here's my cell phone, call me anytime, and I never hear anything again. But people that are really passionate about an issue, that follow through, have meetings, and then are willing to work alongside you as well to get things done, that's been the most effective in mine. But if you have oranges or something like that, I love it. It's a great citrus fruit too, so that doesn't hurt.
For me, it was, I never thought of this, having chickens, backyard chickens. And so it was this lovely couple, and that they have a large family, and they had the cutest kids I've ever seen. And so for 2 years, they would come before the council. They would, in their newsletters or their emails or their letters, they were talking about backyard chickens. And I said, oh, not in the city, that's unheard of. Who would ever think about that? And why is this important? And so they kept coming. They were working with other neighborhood associations. And then we heard from the other side, the fear of having, chickens in one's backyard. And so because of their commitment and the individuals that they were able to partner with, that ordinance was passed in 2013. And I remember them coming to the council when that bill was passed. They had all these cute little kids with them, and they were giving us eggs. And I said, oh, I can't take anything, that's a bribe, you know. But I did say that, I really did. And so, but that was passed, and the fear that other individuals had in regards to the impact that was going to have in their neighborhoods, it really was not a major issue. And I think even till today, we've not received any negativity in regards to passing that particular ordinance. And when it first was brought to our attention, I was not, I can't do that. You know, we live in the city, you know, but that was a very unique approach.
Well, thank you very much. I've had an extra chore this week since my husband and my 4 children went to Wisconsin for spring break, and so I've been left to collect all of the eggs every day. Normally that's someone else's job. Diana?
I really can't think of any creative approaches other than I'll kind of echo what Gavin said, that people who have an interest in passing certain legislation, I think they work better if they're organized and they have their arguments well laid out, and again, they're not necessarily duplicating things through form letters or just saying the same thing. Nothing makes some of our council members' heads explode more than hearing the same thing, speaker after speaker after speaker at the microphone when we have people up there speaking. So I think it's important to kind of organize your thoughts and organize how you're going to present things. So, and then we had to deal with recently country chickens, as Raphael would call them, with the animal ordinance, which I'm not sure if that was effective approaches to passing legislation, but we finally got where we needed to go with the country chickens, because they were upset because now they couldn't have as many chickens in the country as we could have in the city in South Bend. So there seemed to be some disconnect there, so, but we just finished that process.
Brian, anything stand out in your mind?
Just to piggyback, I mean, if you come, you're prepared, you know your information, so that we're using time the most efficient and effective way possible. I think that's going to be the most creative and effective way to get your message across. And generally, the people that I love to meet are people that, you know, they've got handouts for me. They're making an argument for how it impacts them, not just a loose statement, but giving you actual real figures, something that you can really take back to your member and log as, you know, this is how it's affecting constituents. I think anytime you can do that, it's going to be a good meeting, regardless of the level of government you're at.
In the first session, we talked about the difference between anecdotes and actual data or evidence, but it sounds like one of the things you're suggesting is the stories about how it affects you are important, as well as having the facts and figures. Okay. We do want to get to your questions in just a few minutes, so I'll ask just a couple more things and then we'll turn it over to you. What is the best way to build a relationship with your representatives? And do you have, it sounds like we already have some advice for one-on-one meetings. Come with your facts, be respectful. But what about citizens who say, I want to build a relationship, but I feel like I can't get through, or I feel anxious. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid I'll look foolish, and I'm just uncomfortable contacting an elected official. So, Gavin, maybe we'll start with you. What could you say to people who maybe feel a little bit nervous about trying to set up a one-on-one meeting, or they want to get to know you, they want you to know them, but they're not sure how to go about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's, at the local level, it's easy just if you're out and about in the community to run into your elected officials, and hopefully as a result feel more comfortable. Certainly, I don't think I give off much of an intimidating presence, but you know, you could always bring someone with you to the meeting who has a prior relationship, but you mentioned how do you build that relationship. That's just how you build any friendship, right? You get to know people, you share common interests, you back to doing positive things. If you're out in the community and you're doing positive things and you're working to really make the community a better place, your elected officials are going to take note, and they're going to be there alongside you. So you're going to develop those relationships as you go. But I guess if you're intimidated, feel free to reach out via a friend or have a friend accompany you or have someone else represent you at some of those meetings.
Karen?
Okay. I would encourage them, most of our districts, we have neighborhood associations, and they are very powerful, and so I would try to connect them first with a neighborhood association, and that what we have done is that we're coming out into the community. A lot of times it's very difficult to get to the county city building. Parking is always a problem. So that we are really doing our best to go out into the community to make ourselves available, but also to be at those places in which citizens are at so that they can see that we're human, that they can speak with us, and that we will respond to them. But I think that in terms of having individuals who might feel intimidated, I just think that we have to do our best to hopefully help them feel comfortable. Say, I'll meet you where you would want me to meet you at. Let's have coffee. I can meet you at the library. Just having those places within their neighborhoods that they feel comfortable, and then at least they can find and see that we are human as well.
I guess I would just echo the comments of Gavin and Karen, and certainly I tend to meet more people like at Chicker Cafe than I do in my council office. So being out and about in the community is important, and to let them know. I don't think any of us really give off an intimidating air, and I think that the more local the politics is, the easier it is to develop that relationship. As you get a little bigger districts, it's a little hard when you have the whole second congressional district to build some of those personal relationships. So.
Actually, most people who are willing to run for office are pretty outgoing people who like to meet other people, who like to talk to people. Just please don't be intimidated. I'm certain there are people out there who can make you feel that way, but I never knew many of them in the state legislature. I mean, they need your vote when the next election comes up. And I can't imagine that you need to be intimidated that they would ever be rude to you. I would certainly hope not. But once you introduce yourself to them, if you be honest with them, tell them an honest truth, understand the problem that you're dealing with, and be willing to listen. Oftentimes people will come to you with an issue, and they want you to hear their side, but they're not too anxious for you to, in turn, tell them the reason why you might be supporting something. So be willing to listen and be willing to talk over a situation. We've lost the art of coming together in the middle. We need to find it again. And coming together in the middle is because each of us listens to the other. And so start your conversation from that point.
Brian?
Well, I would just add, I mean, as far as anybody that's anxious in an office setting, don't be afraid to, if like you're very nervous to like read a letter, or if you need to bring a friend for moral support, by all means do that. We understand that sometimes that can be kind of an intimidating process, and we do whatever we can to try to eliminate that. And I mean, the other thing, as far as congressional district, obviously it's expansive. 750,000 people. We try to get as many people in front of the Congresswoman as possible, but don't be afraid to create those relationships with staff members. We're always, I'm predominantly in the state of Indiana. I'm always happy to meet with people, and we can establish that relationship. And then, whenever we have an opportunity, get you a meeting with the Congresswoman, and a lot of times I might be able to get you an answer just as quick, if not quicker, than the Congresswoman, because I'm here and I see you more frequently, or I interact in the community with you more regularly. So don't be, never be afraid to reach out to our office and ask for a meeting. That's what we're here for.
And the first person you're probably going to reach is a staff member who's been trained to treat you well and to handle your problem and to take information from you. So, they want to impress you as much as you want to impress them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have about half an hour left for your questions for our panelists.
Beware of the guy who puts his hand up before she even announces it.
And unless anybody has anything to add, no. Okay, so we'll start first with you then, David James.
I want to describe the situation. Well, you were almost talking about a situation that was almost as severe, but during the Vietnam War era, when many of us who took a very principled and strong stand against the war realized that our elected representatives were in the pockets of those who were supporting the war and making a lot of money out of it. It's almost as if it was the same situation as when you people decamped from Indianapolis because things were so difficult. So you get a situation where perhaps the only alternative to get some attention from your legislator is nonviolent disobedience, or filling up the jails, or filling up the halls with shouting, screaming union members, or shouting, screaming anti-abortionists, or whatever. Sometimes the situation is so, the advocacy is so powerful that that's the only thing left. I'd like to hear, from you all on that subject. What did you feel like when you had to get up and leave?
Well, it wasn't the answer ultimately.
Yeah.
It just prolonged the issue. Cost me a lot of money because they fined us and, we had to pay it. So I guess if you believe in something, you might be willing to do that. But ultimately, I can't honestly tell you I know what the better way would have been, but there had to have been a better way. Ultimately, it didn't change anything, did it? So you're meeting in the middle and trying to solve it somehow, probably. Although I know what you're saying. I don't know where that discussion was. It wasn't being had, and I guess it was just it ended up being something that you'd remember for the rest of your life, and you were a part of history. But I would tell you today that it wasn't the answer. I also can't tell you I don't know what the answer was.
Shira?
Hi. Well, I've advocated for laws, and actually they get passed by the Senate in Indianapolis, but they don't get passed by the House.
That happens to a lot.
Here's my main question. Because everybody of my representatives are Democrats, and they always vote for it. The real people I have to go at are the Republicans who are, the supermajority and all that kind of stuff. Now, I have good luck if I actually go down. I don't get to see the legislator. I ask for an appointment. I never get it. But if I call on the phone or I go down to Indy in person, I always see their legislative assistant. Okay. I've never been able to get an appointment with a Republican legislator at all. But what's funny is that when I'm in a restaurant, okay, because I've testified before the committee that heard the bill, okay? It's funny because they'll come and talk to me. And I'm thinking, I couldn't get to talk to you, in the State House, but I'm talking to you here in the restaurant, which is fine. And how do you get to talk with legislators that are not in your district? See, that's what my dilemma is. And I have no problem talking to my state people in my district. And I need to talk to the person in Orange County. I need to talk to those Republican representatives. And
Well, I can't honestly, I've never, well, I shouldn't say that, I don't know all of, but I'm not aware of a legislator who, are you suggesting they don't talk to you because you're a registered Democrat?
no, I think what happens is, because there's going to be Republican legislators here that I've asked for meetings with, and I remember that when I first started, I was so dumb, okay? I kept thinking, my email got lost. My letter got lost. He didn't get my phone call until the woman knew my voice so well, she said, sure, I assure you that Representative so-and-so gets everything I send you. Okay, and this was over like a 3-year period. And then I stopped and I went, oh, I think he doesn't want to meet with me.
Imagine that.
And she smiled and said, I assure you, every letter, she repeated it, okay? And I'm going to be honest, that has been my experience, okay, with the majority of legislators who are not of the political party I belong to. And I know they have the ability to look up your name, to see how you're registered, you know what I mean? Because I never
But I mean, they don't, I mean, I don't think they normally do that. I mean, I never did that, and I was in the minority for a while.
How do you reach those legislators who never respond to you? You can't get a meeting. I've even said, there's legislators in Southern.
Okay, why do you need that particular one? Find another one that will talk to you.
It's been almost like that with the majority of Republican legislators. That I've said, I'll come down to the city you live in Southern Indiana to talk to you. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? And I don't get a response.
Another approach might be see if you can get someone from their district to meet with you, or bring them with you so that you can meet with that person
Someone
in
who
their
knows
district.
them, maybe, yeah.
Now, my last question, and this is not to put you on the spot, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm moving over.
Okay? I emailed the Congresswoman.
Okay.
And I simply asked her, where did she stand, you know, because this was before the legislation did not go through for repeal of Obamacare. I said, okay. I emailed, I gave specific questions, okay? And I said, where did they stand on pre-existing conditions? Where did they stand on requiring mental health and addiction services to be required? You know, I went through. And I waited about 2 or 3 weeks. I got no response.
Okay.
So I called the Mishawaka office. I went through the whole thing again. I was told that I would get a response. Okay. I didn't get a response. Waited about 1.5 weeks or 2. I called the Washington, D.C. office and everything. Told me the same thing. And I asked them to email me a response, right? One person said to me, oh, well, it's check the website for her position on health care. When you check, it doesn't answer specifically is she for this or against it. I called the Mishawaka office back again 2 weeks later. I've been waiting almost a week and a half to 2 weeks. Sorry. I said I would get a response. I still haven't got a response. Now, what bothered me about that was I wrote the Congresswoman's office and I said, please use your influence with President Trump. They no longer have a White House comment line. Okay, it doesn't exist anymore. I then explained that older people, because I work with older people, or people who are not computer literate cannot use the email address. That is why I think the White House comment line is very important. And I repeated, please use your influence to get it back up. I emailed that, and 2 days later, I got a call from the Congresswoman's office telling me she had nothing to do with that. I repeated, I know that. I'm just asking for your influence. It was very upsetting to me, right? That I could get a call back in 2 days to let me know she had nothing to do with the comment line, even though I told her I understood that. But I have called and emailed all these times, and I still do not have a response about my specific question. I was tempted, if it hadn't rained, and I had bad arthritis, to get my picket sign, to go out there and picket in her office, and I'm somewhat savvy, having learned over 5 years to advocate for my bill, okay? To make sure I call the Tribune and every reporter in town. So my question generally is, not just dealing with you, but when you can't get a response back after I've done all I've done, what's the next step?
Well, I apologize that it's taken so long, and I'll be happy to grab your information afterwards to see if I can get. I think based on one of the things you explained is you had several questions in your letter, and so I get the feeling that you're going to get more of a personalized response versus, someone that says, what do you stand with a particular issue? If it's something that we're getting routinely, it's pretty easy to fire off a response. Just like you made the statement, you had asked a question that we didn't have jurisdiction over, and you got a quick response. It's because the person in D.C. that handles all the mail and correspondence and does they're called legislators. legislative correspondent, it's much easier to triage those easy responses quickly to get your mailbox down. When you're asking more technical questions, they have to run that by, obviously, the policy expert and the congresswoman to get approval, and so that takes a little bit longer. And as you can imagine, healthcare being a hot button issue, we received quite a bit of correspondence. So I will do whatever I can afterwards. Make sure you come up with, afterwards I can give you a card, or I can grab down your information, and I'll see if I can hunt you down a response.
For the former legislator, what suggestions you have if that happens? For reaching the legislature?
Well, I've never been on the national scene, so I really don't know, but I don't know what to suggest to you. I really, I don't give up, I guess, is something I would say to, yeah. You look like the get rough type to me, so, now, are we talking about the one specifically that you can't get to respond to you here?
Yeah, I'll be honest, okay?
Yeah.
It is mostly the Republicans that I've not been able to set up meetings with. And, the only way I get any information is I email them, and then I will call their legislative assistants, or I go down to Indianapolis to talk to their legislative assistants. And you know how it works, you sit outside the door,
Yeah.
you tell the man, and you sit in that little chair, and someone comes down.
Okay. We have a question in the back.
My question is specifically for Diana. Okay.
Thanks, Therese.
Are there a couple of key areas where the county has jurisdiction that a city government would not, that we should be aware of if we're looking to influence an issue?
Well, the county, really, we have jurisdiction over the court system and the jail, the sheriff. Those are areas that are not city-related, right? So those are some of the big issues where we have jurisdiction over the townships. There's an interrelationship there. So those
Health jurisdiction?
well, the health department.
Health department.
All of those departments that claim they never have enough funding, we have.
Yes.
Nancy, your resume is very impressive, by the way. Thanks for all your service, and you definitely must be respected by your constituents and be able to, so to speak, move up the ladder. Did I hear you say that at the state level, we'd be surprised how much legislation passes or doesn't pass with almost 100% of the
Yeah,
vote?
there's so much, just every day, I'm trying to find the right word for it. I used the word mundane a while ago. I don't know that that's exact. Just things that, things that have to be fixed, or things that are just non-controversial, just things that maybe a law has been passed and there's something in it that is not quite the way it needs to be, just to fix it. But even other issues. I mean, just things that are part of the state workings and budgets and things. There's so many bills. I mean, I hesitate to give you a percentage because I'm not, but I'm guessing, we always used to say above 90%. I mean, yeah, above 90% where you would just go in and it was on the calendar, and there was, obviously there's still the same discussion and back and forth in the front of the chamber, and the votes are still taken and the votes are still recorded, but I mean, there's so many that are like, obviously in the House is 98-2 or 93-7, those kinds of things. So the controversial ones are really in the minority. Thank goodness.
So this bipartisanism that exists at the state level definitely doesn't exist at the national level. And
well, I'm not exactly sure that that's, I don't mean to imply that that's necessary. I mean, it is bipartisan, but it's not bipartisan because of political philosophy. It's bipartisan just because they're the things that we need to do, keep the state running, that kind of thing.
they aren't very controversial.
Yeah. But, and keep in mind, I have not been in the legislature since 2012, and there's a supermajority there now, and it might be somewhat different, I don't know. But I think for the most part, it's still that way.
Last year, I think Representative, or Senator Mishler said 97.5% of
Okay.
legislation
It's even
that
higher
passed through
than
the
I-
Senate passed bipartisan.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the things that have to be done to make sure our lives run like they're supposed to every day, that kind of thing. And people think of it because you only hear about the controversial parts of it.
And Brian, to a large extent, that's true at the federal level as well, isn't it? That Congress routinely
it
is
is.
passing legislation that we just don't hear about and is not controversial.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the figures, but certainly that's not going to lead the headlines if you've got everybody agreeing. It's going to be those things that at every level of government where there is a bit of a disagreement that those are going to lead the headlines. But I would be curious. I don't know that number. I'd be curious to find out what number of bills are bipartisan. I'm sure it would amaze you how many.
Are you answering that question, Sue, or asking one? Because I have one in front of you. Okay, one in front of you, and then we'll go here and here.
Okay, this question is directed for Nancy, and this is just like more of an example. Could you tell
Sorry, I
me?
can't hear you.
Could you tell me whom or how would I go about approaching to find someone in the state to change the grandparents' rights for Indiana? Because I did.
You know, there are some people, I'm sorry that I can't tell you who they are, but we could probably find someone who can. There are people, many people in the state legislature have specific issues on which they focus, which that, you know, children's issues or, I mean, they just are well known for that. So you would need to find someone who's probably tried in the past to pass some of those, some of that legislation and just talk to them and tell them you support them and find out what their plans are in the future. So there are people there, I know, who focus on those kinds of things. I can't tell you who that is,
If
but
that's the problem, I don't even know where to start. I mean, I read
I'll show
about.
you how to do it.
here's the lady.
And one thing is that you can see the committee listing and who's on committees, and so you can say, oh, look, this committee has the word families in it. Why don't I start there? And those legislative aids would
It could be
be.
that simple. Or you could simply talk to your local legislator, you know, and say, who do you know in the legislature that is working on grandparents' rights? And I'm certain they could tell you.
Yeah, because it's the India.
Because people just get to be, they get to be known for specific causes. I mean, even in the legislature.
Sometimes Googling news stories will pop up which legislators are working on those too. Okay, we have Sue, and then in the peach, and then Lois.
Okay, so I'll partially answer her question. There's something called legiscan.com, and you can scan for legislation on things like grandparent issues or whatever. Actually, I gave Elizabeth a whole list of links. And you can go to the Indiana State Legislature website, and you can click on and scan for certain, like you said, family or whatever things. So there are some ways of scanning that Google won't pick up. But I gave you a whole 2 pages of links to use for resource. What I wanted to say was, what didn't come up a lot, and Gavin's real good, because I wanted to compliment him because I'll send him a question through Facebook, and boy, you're on it. I mean, you answer me right back, and I appreciate that. And so I understand that if you want to get a hold of the mayor of South Bend, you tweet him something, and that's a better method to get across to him. I just want to say, Gavin, I like that you have a page. I like that you answer your Facebook page right away. I appreciate that. And I was wondering if maybe you could teach the other council members that they can. He's the younger, more tech-savvy one here, so I'm going to put him on the spot. But on Facebook, for example, Diana and Karen, I've emailed you or I messaged you on Facebook because we're not friends. It went to your spam inbox. And so maybe you can
friend request.
Huh?
Send me a request.
No. Well, I know, but the point isn't, you should just be able to answer something without a friend request. I did send you, actually I did send you both friend requests.
I'll follow up with that.
But there is a second email box for requests. And so I wanted to say electronically, I think there's a learning curve on both sides. So, yeah, if you can't get through with email, try Facebook, or even commenting on a comment on Facebook, even if they don't answer back your message request, and tweeting to the mayor. Whoever said that, tweet to the mayor.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something in support of our friend who is trying to have a breakthrough and reaching legislators she's not been able to. And just share that I think one of the most frustrating things is that when you get upset enough or concerned enough to write a letter, you would like a serious response. And when you get a response that either refers you to the legislator's website so that you can see the position, or you get a letter that says, this is the way I'm going, what that communicates is that your opinion does not matter. You get no acknowledgement. It's not that you expect your legislator to share your point of view, but you want to be heard. And I will share that the best response I ever had from a letter was from Senator Dan Coates, a Republican, when I wrote to Mitch McConnell to express my distress at the refusal to give Merrick Garland a hearing, which I thought was an abdication of their responsibilities. As a senator, I copied our two senators, and I heard immediately from then Senator Dan Coates. It was a very, very polite and friendly letter, and although I realized that we did not agree, he gave me insight into a portion of the decision that had not been articulated, and I just wanted to share that and say how helpful that was, as opposed to just hearing, I'm doing this and this and this and this. So we look to have our opinions heard, if not acted upon.
Okay. Lois, did you still have your question? And then we'll come over here.
Oh, okay. Well, first I want to say thank you to the council members. The other night, sitting through that water thing, I sat there in awe and just wondered, how do you do it? I don't know, night after night.
Karen's amazing.
Regina had school the next day, and some of the people that testified had school the next day. Thank you. It's amazing because those kind of issues, I didn't know about the corrosive stuff. I mean, we don't know what you are handling, so thank you for that. Now, for people, I know Cheryl, so I know what she's been. My issue is with the others and the gun issue. The fear in our society is, well, that's why we're all here. We're trying to find out the most effective way to deal with the fear and the anger. I was distressed to read, was it yesterday, that in the state legislature, it is okay now for anybody to carry. I've walked the halls of Congress in Washington. I've sat in their big couches. How can we help to thank you for the 7-2 vote for the resolution. What can we do to help that resolution get through a body, legislative body that is sitting there, I guess, do they register their gun at the door, or they're sitting there with their guns at the ready? And everybody that knows me knows I'm not trying to take away those guns that are, not for use for what is on the street. I'm concerned about on the street and how they can go to a 4-H fairgrounds. I was a part of a prayer group who stood at the grounds some years ago with our signs that, at a gun show, then we went to the board of the 4-H fair and said, aren't 4-H, what does that stand for children? And it's money. The board needed money to have the fairgrounds for people to enjoy. So how do we go forward more than what the leaders have been doing?
I'm glad you saved the biggest question for the last. The State House is not a very safe place. You know, they have certain doors you can go in and out, but you know, they have those great big wooden doors and they open up and they stay open for what, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and anybody can just, you know, walk in. They always talked when I was in the legislature about a lot of legislators legally, you know, carried guns. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I had it, and I never felt terribly unsafe, but I guess I could understand, but I don't know how giving people more guns is going to solve the problem. And that's not an answer to your question, I know, but
what more can you do to help the resolution go on to pass there too? Because
I just voice your opinion. I mean, if they, and I know, I bet.
The gun lobby stops, but 80% of Americans want reasonable gun safety. And Congress failed to do their job. What do we do as concerned citizens?
Can I just say something? You have to educate people, and this is no disrespect, but oftentimes it's people who feel the same about the issue talking to others. I learned that when it came to the bill I've been working on, okay? And so you mentioned Knox County. I've been down and I would find people in Knox County and we were diabolically opposed, okay? I'm a flaming liberal, they were a flaming conservative. Okay. And it's helping those people understand. So I had to first educate, you know what I mean, people and about my issue and everything. And then I found that people, they had all these myths, okay? So I had to dissuade. My issue was getting food stamps for ex-offenders who were convicted of drug felonies, so they can't get them in Indiana for the rest of their lives. So I had to educate people on the misconception they were getting. You know what I mean? Which you say like facts and everything. Then I had to bring in people who had experiences and they told their life what it was like to get out of prison, not to have food stamps, to rely on food pantries, and you're diabetic and high blood pressure. So I guess all I can say is that I have found I have to get into Elkhart County and I have to get into Marshall County, you know what I'm saying? And talk to the people and everything. And then I'm able to get them, when I send them an email like I did this time around, they wrote, so they send me a copy of what they wrote to their legislator in that county, who happens to be Republican. But I used to think it was an easy issue to understand.
Okay, we have a couple more questions we want to try to take really quickly. The gun issue is definitely a complicated one. It's a little bit different than some others in terms of looking at public survey results that might lead you to believe that certain legislation would pass that doesn't, et cetera. That could be a whole nother panel. But you've been waiting for quite some time.
It's just a real quick thing, an observation regarding not wanting to see form letters, which I understand. I would like to point out that quite often, that's what I get back when I do contact the legislator. Whatever I said, no one is.
She says yes. What she said, and I should repeat the questions for the recording, but what she said is regarding an elected official's desire not to get form letters, that she would like to point out that that's what she gets back when she writes is a form letter.
And I don't have an answer.
There's no answer, but I want to put that out there because.
But you're right.
You get sick and tired of even bothering when you know what you've written and you've taken the time, whether it's via email or, physical letter, and you've made specific questions like, another person used before, and you get back boilerplate that has nothing to do with what you wrote in about. At that point, I'm done even trying with that person. So I'm trying to point out that it's a two-way street, and if we really want to get past bipartisanship, or lack of bipartisanship, I should say, there has to be a better conversation, and it comes up.
And that's where it starts.
Okay, I am going to extend our time for 5 minutes to take these two quick questions before we leave.
I want to just, reaffirm too, I've gotten lots of form letters back from my national representatives in response to particular questions, and it is frustrating. How do we get past the lobbies? How do we get heard? How do we as citizens have our voice count as much with no dollars? I have no dollars to buy any influence, to take anybody out to dinner, to try to get my voice and what have you, say, this is Karen and she feels this way about an issue. I can't be running ads on TV and YouTube saying, call Joe Darley, tell him to vote on Gorsuch. Okay, I can't do that. I don't have, the American Heritage Foundation or anybody backing me. I don't work for a think tank. I'm a citizen and I'm not being heard. My voice does not matter. I feel, and I'm engaged. I'm an activist. I'm calling, I'm writing, I'm reading the legislative notes, I'm looking at the committee members, and I don't feel like my voice as an individual person, as a single voter, as a human being, as a citizen of this country and of this state, that I don't count as much as the NRA or somebody else who's got 10 pockets who can buy insurance and it's upsetting. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be respectful. I am passionate. But respectfully, I'm tired of it. And you say like, well, the most recent national election was because people weren't being heard. That hasn't changed. That person who got elected didn't hear me, but that's a whole other story. That hasn't changed. And it's extraordinarily frustrating. Citizens United can just, I can't even. Corporations are not people, and people we want to be involved, we want to be engaged. I hear about voter applications, just like when my kids were in school, I heard about parents on the fault my ass. I was in there, talking to the principal every week, trying to get information, trying to advocate for my kid. This is my country. I love this country as much as my kids, if not more so, because it belongs to them too.
Yeah, Brian, this must be a frustration you've heard before and that you all talk about in terms of how to get away from, despite the large volume of mail, personalizing it or getting back to people or making people feel heard. I know one of the big controversies locally has been Representative Walorski's decision not to hold regular town hall meetings as a way to collectively hear from people. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you try to do to address this concern, and also why not take a more group-based approach?
Well, I mean, anytime that, our staff obviously meets with constituents regularly. Whenever the Congresswoman's in town, we try to meet with as many people and pack her schedule as full as possible, meeting with constituents. And again, I'm happy to meet with you. If you want to set up a meeting, we can talk for a half hour and I can try to address a lot of what you said because you packed a lot in there. One of the ways that we try to separate, quote unquote lobbying organizations is part of having that software and being able to look up the actual constituent and log what their individual concerns are. And I understand with form letters the frustration there, and I'll say it kind of to defend the state as well. When you're getting as much correspondence as you are at the state level, and they only have one employee, one legislative assistant that they're sharing with 5 other people. We've got 14 total, but not all 14 aren't dealing just with constituent matters. You've got a couple of folks, and you got 750,000 people you're trying to respond to. It's sometimes difficult to answer those individual questions, and sometimes you do that shotgun blast. And the biggest thing I can say is if you're not happy with the letter that you get, feel free to call our office and see if we can give you some sort of a clarification. And it's my hope that we will be able to. And again, I'll offer myself as a resource. I mean, if for some reason you have a question you're not satisfied with, an answer that you're getting asked for me, and I'll do my best to get back with you to give you the best answer that I can get you.
Okay.
I was at Martin Luther King Center earlier today against violence, against violence, and there's a growing concern about how justice is being dispensed in our county. And at the state level, I'm getting a runaround. So who do we address our concern to locally in the county, to the county officials? Who would we address our concern?
Can you be a little bit more specific about the concern, just in a sentence or two?
Just the way the dispense law, they'll take the driving while intoxicated called the dip issue, and they've go both ways with it. Instead of having one law for everybody, it seems like they dispense it at their,
Unequal dispensing of justice.
So really, that sounds like a court situation, so the prosecutors or the judges that are.
Voice our opinion to somebody.
Well, the prosecutor's office, you can talk to your council members as well, and they can carry that information back to the proper offices too.
We'll talk with you. Okay, just talk with us. Okay. Okay.
Well, I want to thank all of you for coming this evening and thank all of our panelists. Next week, we will talk more about the local, state, and national legislative process in detail so that you can really see where you can effectively intervene when a particular piece of legislation is being considered. And so that will be the topic next week. It will be the same time, 6:30 to 8, Wednesday, and in this same location. So on behalf of the American Democracy Project and the St. Joseph County Public Library, we thank you for coming out tonight. Be sure to submit your survey before you leave. And I'm sure that all of these folks will be happy to continue these conversations.